Welcome to episode 13 of Nick Sports Now's Victory Again podcast. As always, I'm Joe Smeltzer, joined by Brandon Walker. And Brandon, Penn State just had its early signing day period. Early signing day was Wednesday. This is being recorded Thursday night. Pretty solid class for Penn State. Wasn't quite as celebrated as last year's class was. Doesn't have the high ratings, doesn't have players as hyped up, I guess, and acclaimed as Drew Aller, Nick Singleton, Abdul Carter, denied Dennis Sutton. But this is still a pretty solid class for Penn State. It's two good classes in a row, placed in the top 15 of all three major recruiting outlets, those being 24/7 Sports, Rivals.com, and On Free Sports. So, yeah, Penn State's starting to stack some classes together after kind of an underwhelming 2021 class, at least rankings wise. That class placed out a top 20, but back-to-back top 15 classes for James Franklin. The team finished the regular season 10-2, has a chance to win game number 11 in the Rose Bowl January 2nd against Utah. Things are looking pretty good overall in Happy Valley right now.
Oh yeah. Hell yeah. This is a I don't yeah, that is a solid class. That's pretty good. That's top 10% out BS. So you can't complain about that class. But the only complaint I would have is no big boys up on the defensive line. That's the only thing that doesn't make this class. Because they got another running back. They got their defensive backs addressed this area. They got five good defensive backs, one decommitted today, but I figured they're not going to get all those guys from the South, all of them. I knew one of them was going to flip. But you got a couple pass rushers. You got another linebackers late. Kavion Keys. I think he may be two in Virginia. Tony Ross and Tamir Robinson. I actually think Keys could be the best out of the bunch. I actually think so. If I just look at the tape, he has the most. I think he has the most upside. We got to see about Tamir Robinson how he bounces back from the knee injury. But overall, I like the class, except we needed a defensive tackle. Hopefully, we get it in the transfer.
Yeah, the transfer portal, plenty of options there. But the one defensive tackle Penn State did sign is Ty Blanding, and he's actually a guy that James Franklin, the last line of his post-signing day press conference, he said Ty Blanding's somebody he thinks is underrated. He's somebody he doesn't have the size that you really look for necessarily in a big defensive tackle. He's only about 265 pounds, but he's also versatile as a result of not having as much weight on him. He can play outside on the edge. He could play linebacker if you need him to. He's a guy that, as James Franklin pointed out, because he comes from New York, that's not a state that's really known for high school football at all. But Penn State's gotten some pretty good players from there. Adisa Isaac's from New York. He's pretty good. So maybe Ty Blanding can fall in that line. Some other guys you talked about. Tamir Robinson is somebody we're both going to be watching closely for obvious reasons. He's not only a Pennsylvania guy, he's a Pittsburgh guy. We're both from the Pittsburgh area. Robinson, somebody who was one of the highest regarded players in the country his junior year. Then he tears his knee up, has to miss the rest of his junior year, ends up not playing at all his senior year either. So this is a guy that hasn't seen game action in a long time. And it really kind of speaks to Penn State in their recruiting process of Tamir Robinson, because I remember talking with Robinson after he signed. I went in person to his signing day ceremony in Homewood, which is where he grew up playing football. And after signing, he said there were schools that basically turned their backs on him after he got injured. Michigan was one he mentioned, said they told him basically don't bother coming for an official visit because they weren't looking at him anymore. But Penn State stuck by him, and watching the signing day stream yesterday when they got to Robinson's part, Franklin, of course, talks with every signee via Zoom. And one thing that Manny Diaz said to Robinson on the Zoom was that at a staff meeting in the spring, I forget the exact line, but Manny Diaz said something in the staff meeting like, if we want to be who Penn State is supposed to be, we have to sign Tamir Robinson. And Manny Diaz has a pretty good eye for talent, obviously.
Yeah, he can recruit.
Yeah, he can recruit, he can coach, and his reputation as both not only the defensive coordinator, of course, but as a linebackers coach is pretty solid in the college football world. And when I heard him say that too, Robinson, it made me think of a high compliment he paid another linebacker from last year's recruiting class, 2022. He said to this linebacker, he said that it was the linebacker I'm talking about was the first player Diaz watched on tape. And immediately after a few plays, he said, that's who a Penn State linebacker is supposed to be. Who was the player I'm referring to? That was Abdul Carter. Diaz said that too. So Carter's turned out pretty well. Robinson's a high character guy, highly respected. His high school coach, Andrew Moore, I talked with him at the signing ceremony that I mentioned. He told me first thing he said about Tamir when I asked him is that Tamir is probably the greatest person in the world. So that's coaches always compliment their players, but those compliments aren't said about too many people. So I'm watching Tamir Robinson because it seems like he has that it factor. I don't know if it's going to show up about on the field, but personality wise, like what his coaches say about him, he's a guy that you can just tell has something special about him as a person, and we'll see how that displays as a player at Penn State. He also has a mural in his hometown, which not a lot of people get. So,
Well, we'll see about it because I never really got to see him play like that. I mean, because this year he was injured. The only recruit that I actually personally saw play was Lamont Payne, the 3-star from Chartiers Valley. They weren't much to look at as a team, but let's just put it this way: he was the only person that impressed. Saw him play at Central Valley, so it's we'll see about that. We'll see about these recruits. I who do you think in this class can contribute right away?
that's a good question. It's kind of hard because the best players in this class, at least ratings wise, are linemen, right? And linemen don't usually come right as freshmen and dominate. It's hard for anybody to come in as a true freshman, especially on the offensive line when I think the age gap is a little more apparent. Um, and it's also hard because so many of Penn State's regular contributors are already playing key roles and are going to be back with those roles next year. Like Abdul Carter's not going to step aside, so it's going to be hard for the linebackers. London Montgomery and Cam Wallace, I don't think are going to play too much because you have Singleton and Allen there, and presumably it looks like Kevon Lee's coming back as well. So you'll have 3 running backs in the fold, so it's going to be hard for them to see the field, especially with Montgomery coming back from his ACL injury.
Right. I
Um,
figure he's gonna redshirt anyway.
yeah, that he,
Yeah, I think he's
I
gonna. They're
think
gonna.
both of them are probably going to redshirt. There's really no reason for them not to
But
redshirt out.
you could I think he might be able to play Wallace if he's because I saw his tape. He like if he can return punts and return kicks, I think
Yeah, that is
that's
true.
his
And
key to getting some
he could
time.
be used on special teams. Yeah, and you have some guys that can be used on special teams. I think Zion Tracy is somebody that's gonna play defense, but he's also a threat with the ball in his hands. You might see him back there returning. You have Nick Singleton obviously and Daquan Hardy both back. They'll be returning. So I think Brandon, you should probably look to the secondary for who's gonna play right away because looking at the 2021 freshman class, obviously the 2022 class, we know Carter, Singleton, and Allen, those are the 3 guys. But with Joey Porter Jr. gone, there's going to be a lot of players are still coming back for Penn State, so there might not be as much room. But going back to 2021, both Jalen Reed and Kalen King got a lot of playing time toward the end of the season as true freshmen. So I think a guy like King Mack is a player that is talented enough to get some time right away. And when I say some time, I don't think anybody's going to start week 1 against West Virginia as true freshman.
Oh no! But I think he's
Yeah.
going to be a contributor.
Yeah,
I
I
like
think
King Mack and I like that Elliott Washington, that safety, because you got to
yeah.
replace Jair Brown too.
Yeah, and I think because of his versatility, you might see the Curry Nelson get some reps. He's a guy that a lot of people are saying, I think if you ask most Penn State people, and not recruiting experts, but fans that follow recruiting, they'll probably say that they expect Nelson to be a linebacker at Penn State eventually. And that might happen. He is 6'3". He is tall. He has the size, but one of the main reasons, and I noticed from a few conversations with Dakari, both before and after he committed to Penn State, as well as what he said on signing day yesterday, one of the main reasons he came to Penn State was Anthony Poindexter's track record of putting safeties in the NFL. So that tells me that he wants to be a safety. And he's played very well at safety in high school, and he's listed as a safety on the roster right now at Penn State. So Penn State thinks he can play safety, and his build is similar to Jaquan Brisker, who's also a taller guy, right? Jair Brown was a taller guy, and he not only played in the secondary, he led the nation in interceptions, tied for the nation lead in interceptions 2021, and led Penn State in interceptions in 2022. So I think Nelson could play safety. I'm not ruling out him playing linebacker, but I think you're going to see a guy. He's more likely to become Jair Brown and Jaquan Brisker than he is to become Jonathan Sutherland, who fully transitioned to Sam linebacker. I think this is a guy that has the ball skills needed to play in the secondary, and I think he's going to make a mark on the secondary at Penn State. I don't really see him becoming a full-time linebacker.
Right, because it's like, oh, look at the class. It's impressive. Another guy you could probably get is Carmelo Taylor.
Yeah,
because he's the only receiver you have an opening with Parker Washington.
You have a few openings.
Yeah, you have a few openings. I was like, and they said they have this from the transfer portal, Jimmy Horn, but I think he's going to Colorado.
Yeah, and Penn State's going to add a transfer at receiver. There's no doubt about that. No disrespect to Keandre Lambert-Smith, who I think is very talented and could be a big-time player, but they don't want to start next season with a guy who had less than 300 yards receiving as their number one. Smith's kind of weird because, like, he has the experience and he's been in Mike Yurcich's system for 2 years, going on 3 years, but at the same time, he's always had people ahead of him. He had Jahan Dotson and Parker Washington ahead of him for the first 2 years, and he had Parker Washington and Mitch Tinsley ahead of him this year. So you're not really comfortable with starting him at number one. And not that you'd necessarily be comfortable with a guy like Dante Cephas, Caden Proctor from West Virginia, Cephas from Kent State.
Right.
Those guys would be somewhat risky too, just because they would be going into a new offense. But I think you want a guy that's had 1,000 yards or so in Division I football before, and that's something that a guy like Dante
that's scary. That's a concern heading into next year. And plus Carmelo Taylor's small. I looked at his, I know it's not accurate because it's high school stuff, but they list him as like 160. So I'm like, I don't know, man. They got to find a receiver.
Yeah, and he has time to bulk up too. And we can't forget about Caden Saunders, because he was the guy that was very seldom used this season. It was just, I think it was kind of hard for him to find the role because he could have performed on both offense and special teams. But the problem is, you look at punt returns, Parker Washington handled those. Receivers, you had Washington, Tinsley, and Keandre Lambert-Smith, and then you had Trey Wallace come on and become a pretty solid number 4 and then eventually a number 3 receiver. So there wasn't much room, especially in an offense that didn't really pass a whole ton to begin with. There wasn't really much opening for Caden Saunders to get stuff done. But I think next year, hey, receiver's going to be a question mark, at least coming in. You're going to have an offense that has more of a pass-friendly quarterback, I'd say. You have Washington gone, so the punt returner position opens up, so he can do that. So I think Caden Saunders is a guy that was a high-end 4-star recruit, which we forget about that because other guys in his class were able to perform more instantaneously than Caden Saunders was. But this is a guy that could break out, and he's the guy that is one to watch with so many question marks on Penn State's.
And he was a freshman this year, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I could see that. You know what? I think he could be a breakout candidate because I actually see a little bit of Jahan Dotson in him. A little bit.
James Franklin, he said back on signing day 2022, or 2020, the 2022 class that was in 2021. But anyway, Franklin said that he was the guy that could have KJ Hamler's speed and Jahan Dotson's receiving skills. That's a pretty good combination. And speaking of KJ Hamler, Franklin said that Carmelo Taylor is faster now than KJ Hamler was at the same age.
Like
So
I could see if he could get hands, if he could develop, if he bulks up, man. I think Aller's gonna do him more justice than Sean Clifford. Sean Clifford, Sean Clifford. We don't want to beat him up anymore, but
yeah,
Aller is going to be the better quarterback. I would hope so.
yeah,
He better be
we would all
because
assume.
he make the receivers look better.
Yeah,
So
yeah, and we also have I don't know what Harrison Wallace is gonna do. I think he'll probably stay, but you just never know. But let's talk about some of the high end recruits of Penn State's class. And by that, I'm talking about Javen Williams. Javen Williams, he's a 5-star. That jumps out right away. But there is so much more about Javen Williams that we could talk about. We could do a whole episode on him alone, but there's so much to talk about just beyond his star rating. It is just absolutely crazy. Uh he was a state champion and a state record holder in track, not even football, in the shot put. And the person whose Pennsylvania record he broke in the shot put, a guy named Joe Kovacs, who became a silver medalist in the Tokyo Olympics. And that's his second sport.
right.
And yeah, that's just track. And he might, and I don't know if this is still true. I talked to him back in May. I have not followed up on this. I want to follow up on it. But as of May, Jaden Williams was considering doing track and football at Penn State. And James Franklin and the coaching staff were on board with it. So I don't know what he wants to do. Nothing is confirmed. I don't know if that's still being discussed. I don't know if that's confirmed. This is just what I said. What my last conversation with Williams back in May. So
Shot put. Yeah, I've seen it because you know what I had to read. Yeah, I did the write up about that. I was like, state record. I didn't know about who he broke, whose
yeah,
record he
that's
broke.
crazy.
But yeah, they said on 24/7 article about 50 freaks, he was up there of the 2023 recruiting class. So that's good. But I'm just trying to figure out. I know we talked about it. What roles are they going to play on this offensive? I think
Well, they don't. I don't think they have to play big roles yet.
they don't have to, but yeah, because you could develop him for a year.
Yeah,
I think you could develop all of them for a year.
especially even before Olu Fashanu decided to stay in school. I didn't think there would be much of an opportunity. And I think actually I wouldn't be surprised if the guy that gets the most playing time in year one is Anthony Donko because of his size.
Yeah, that's what you need. Because he, hold up, let me take a look. I didn't you see. I didn't know about his size. I think he's bigger than the other ones, right?
Yeah,
And but I thought he was gonna play tackle. I thought he was a
I think the plan
uh
is to play him at tackle. I'm gonna pull up Donka's size. This is, by the way, episode 13 of the Victory Again
six
podcast.
five three 6'5" 3. I mean, according to 24/7 Sports says 6'5" 310.
Yeah, and comparatively, Alex Birchmeyer, Penn State's second highest signee, 6'5", 285, and Javen Williams is 6'5", 290. So both roughly the same.
They're
But
not that's not tiny, but you know, you gotta but the good thing is all three of them are they're all enrolling early, correct? They're gonna be there next month.
yes,
So yeah, you got time to get in that college weight room, get in the college plan, and you could put up a good 15, 20 pounds before fall camp. So that's one thing. You got three linemen, you know what? Guess what? We're gonna actually maybe watch a real spring game this year.
we'll see. That's possible.
Because
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know what I don't know what we. I knew what we. I was like, I
yeah.
was like,
We watched the practice.
yeah, it's a practice.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
that,
Yeah, so just talking about the lineman Penn State has back though, obviously Fashanu's at the head of it, but you got Drew Shelton's going to get more time. Vega Ione's going to get more time. You have Landon Tangwall, hopefully back from his season-ending injury. You got Hunter Norzad coming back. You're probably going to add a transfer. I'm not sure who, but I think you'll add a transfer in there. You'll have a lot.
You'll have a
So,
lot, yeah. Because that wasn't that the reason why they had to do what they had to do last year?
yes,
Because they didn't have enough linemen.
they had like 4 linemen maybe. They were banged up, and they had some linemen that weren't enrolled yet. Because of that's another thing considering spring games is not everybody's there.
Okay, because I saw a
Uh,
lot of people are going like the Cardi Nelson summer. I think
yeah,
Elliot
I think
Washington summer.
Frank James said that half of the class, 11 players, are enrolling early, which means that due to math, 11 aren't. So it's about 50-50. But Dakari Nelson's not. He's enrolling in the summer. Andrew Rapelier is enrolling in the summer. Uh, Other guys as well. But yeah, it's about split. So
Yeah, but I like that Rapelier too. I didn't want to pronounce screw up his last name. I like him because we don't know if Brenton Strange is going to be coming back
right.
for sure, and he may have a role in the offense. So I like because they like to run that T formation that usually gets on my nerve. Sometimes get on my nerves, but it works inside the red zone. So it's going to be a very. I think we're going to have some impact players in this class. And what we like I said, we need I cannot stress this. We need defensive tackles, big ones. I don't care how you get them. You need to get people because I'm not really concerned. I said before in a different podcast, like I'm not concerned about beating like Ohio State. I think we can beat them because we really pushed up. I'm sorry, not we. Penn State was actually pushing them around. If you saw, if you were there,
Yeah,
they were
they
pushing
were in
them
it.
around.
It was an even game. It wasn't a game Penn State necessarily had in the bag, I would say, but it
Oh, I
was
didn't say that had in the bag, but
no, but yeah, I know what you were saying, but it was
like,
they were toe to toe. Ohio State ended up catching in on Penn State's mistakes and won by probably that well not definitely the score was did not do the game justice for how close it was.
yeah,
But
because you're talking about beating Michigan, you got to have these big. I mean, you got to have these linebackers, these Tamir Robinson that's getting all belly hyped up, and we all know what Carter can do. You got to have bodies in front of us that can stop the run.
yeah, you don't know if Curtis Jacobs is going to be back next year. We'll see about that. But you mentioned Rapelier, and it's kind of crazy. Tight ends, with or without Brenton Strange, Penn State is going to have bodies at tight end next year.
Right.
Tyler Warren, Theo Johnson, Khalil Dinkins, another Western PA guy who was the odd man out of the tight end group this year. Jerry Cross, we didn't really see much of. 4-star signee from the class of 22 out of Milwaukee. Then you got the free guys this year, Shelfer, Rapelier, who we mentioned, and Mega Barnwell, which they have Barnwell as a tight end. He definitely has the size he has the size to do a lot of things. He's 6'6", but with his versatility and with the amount of tight ends that Penn State has in its arsenal, I don't see how Barnwell doesn't switch positions. I mean, I could be I'm not on the coaching staff, I'm not in the meetings. I don't know what went into putting Barnwell at tight end. There's no harm in putting him at tight end right now because first game's not till September, so you just experiment whatever. But I think he's gonna move. But Rapelier is a guy that people have compared to Pat Fryermuth, and that's putting a lot of pressure on a guy. But I mean, the comparisons are there. Both are big guys, both played high school ball in Massachusetts, both were pretty good basketball players in high school. Rapelier 6'4", 245, pretty good height for a tight end. And something his coaches were telling me back when he committed is that Rapelier was never really able to bulk up too much because he played basketball, right? And you play football, you're focused on one thing, but then you play basketball and you got to get up and down the floor. You have to you got to be strong, but you can't be too bulky because, you're burning off so much running. He's not going to have to worry about that at Penn State. He can
Oh
focus on
yeah.
football and focus on having his body conditioned for just one sport. And I think that's going to help out a lot. And he's the guy kind of had a meteoric rise in the recruiting ranks. I think the On 300 had him as the number 2 tight end in the country. But he's the guy that I would definitely watch. And it's going to be hard this year, especially if Brendan Strange stays, for him to kind of make a big impact. But look out along the line, because especially with Drew Hour still playing quarterback, presumably in 2024, that's a tight end that's athletic. He's can block, and he's kind of the total package at a tight end. And I think Rapplier can be a difference maker at Penn State.
I think so too. Let me see. I'm trying to figure out. Uh, I'm guessing since he's gonna be play basketball, he's a summer guy. I guess.
Yeah, he's going. He goes to a boarding school, and I don't think they let people do that like enroll early at other places.
Okay,
So
that's something I didn't know because a lot of these guys are like I see. I didn't know how that got determined. So I'm like, enrolling early, is he enrolling late? I'm like, all right. So that's the thing. But we got to talk about this. I know we don't want to do it, but we are in Pittsburgh, and we not only lost a Steeler legend around here, we lost a Penn State legend and Franco Harris.
yeah, yeah, that's we definitely have to talk about that. Franco Harris is just Penn State icon, NFL icon, Pittsburgh icon. He's gone involved with causes away from football. Franco Harris, if you don't know anything about football, maybe you don't know who Mel Blount is. Maybe you're not familiar with Mike Webster, Andy Russell. You might not know of Andy Russell. You might not know John Stallworth. And I'm not disrespecting any of those guys, but my point is Franco Harris was bigger than football and really bigger than life in Pittsburgh. A great tweet I saw about Franco from Neil Rudell, who's been covering Penn State for the Altoona Mirror since 1977. He tweeted that between football and public appearances and everything of that nature, Franco Harris might have been just about the most photographed human being of all time. And it was crazy. I used to joke about it. Like there never seemed to be an endorsement, never seemed to be a public appearance, never seemed to be a photo op that Franco Harris would turn down. And a lot of people, I'm sure, probably saw that as room to criticize because, oh, like this guy just wants to be in front of the camera, he wants the attention, whatever. No, I don't think that was the case with Franco at all. I just think he genuinely liked helping out. And at the point, like Franco Harris, years away from football, I mean, you really have nothing to gain personally by being out and about. I mean, you have your legacy secure. You're known as a great player, known as a good guy, but he just kept doing it because I think he loved it. I just think he loved being out in the open. And I did meet Franco Harris once. He spoke at the I think it was like the Pittsburgh Alumni Association of Penn State, whatever. They had a meeting at PNC Park, the old Hall of Fame club. And Franco spoke at that in the summer of 2012, talked with him a little bit. But I think my number one Franco story was this is the spring of 2011. Uh my family, me, my mom, my dad, I'm an only child. The whole family goes to see Thor, which was in theaters, and it's a 3D movie. So everybody's got their 3D glasses on. We walk in, and the first person I see, it's just Franco Harris sitting down with 3D glasses on. And it was like we were surprised to see Franco, but at the same time, he was such a fixture in the community that it also felt like it was just another guy at the same time, just sitting there. Like he was everywhere, and he'll be deeply missed. And the timing we know is awful. Just days before he was going to be honored at Heinz Field before the Steelers Raiders game to commemorate the 50th anniversary of his most famous moment and maybe the most famous moment in NFL history, the Immaculate Reception, which Franco is obviously responsible for, and that's been honored in numerous ways. Maybe the most visible being in Pittsburgh's airport, where there's a statue of Franco Harris bending down and picking up the ball. And just crazy. It's hard to say stuff about a guy like Franco Harris that somebody else hasn't said already. But he'll be missed. 72, not young, but we all thought he
Yeah,
had plenty of life to still live. But it could go at any moment, and that's just something that we all need to keep in mind. But yeah, Franco
yeah.
Harris, been eulogized by many, honored by many. Rest in peace.
Yes, rest in peace to him. I met him once at a. It wasn't. No, I mean, I didn't speak to him. I didn't think he was gonna. I thought he was big Tommy, but since we have like only a few minutes left, I will be there on Saturday. So it's gonna be like a big wake,
Yeah,
a celebration of life. It's gonna be huge. So, but what I will say is he's maybe defined by one play, but he's one of the most clutchest players in NFL running backs in NFL history. Most yards ever in a Super Bowl.
yep,
Finished second all time in rushing. He can play in any era. He's 6'2", 230. And like, and people just don't. I think he's the most underrated player, and he's great of all time,
yeah.
despite winning 4 Super Bowls.
Yeah, and people, I think people forget that Franco Harris. Well, first they forget that he ever played for the Seattle Seahawks. That was a forgettable part of Franco's career and life. He left the Steelers on bad terms, but obviously those fences were mended long ago. But he went to the Seahawks for a year, and he was fighting it out with Walter Payton for the NFL rushing record. And Payton obviously ended up getting that record, and since Emmitt Smith has eclipsed that. But yeah, he was great. I don't know how he only made one All Pro team. He made 9 Pro Bowls back when making the Pro Bowl actually meant something.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just a great running back. Not really known. I don't want to say he wasn't a tough player because like anybody in the NFL is tough, but he was the guy that was known to like, he was gonna go off to the sideline more than he likely he was gonna truck somebody over. Like that's just the type of runner he was. But the style worked out for him. It got him yards. And Cam Hayward was talking about it yesterday with Steelers reporters. He said that Franco Harris was the missing piece of the Steelers dynasty. And you look at how the Steelers won the Super Bowl in '74, and that draft class, the greatest draft class I think of all time, and will always be the best draft class ever. 4 Hall of Famers and really 5 Hall of Famers because Donnie Shell was an undrafted free agent. He was in that class, but Lynn Swan, John Stallworth, Jack Lambert, Mike Webster, and then the undrafted free agent Donnie Shell. I don't think any team is ever going to top that. But those guys are thought of as the guys that kind of push the Steelers from playoff contender, playoff qualifiers to Super Bowl champs. But going back before that, the Steelers were steadily getting better. After Chuck Noll got hired, they drafted Joe Green in '69. Um, drafted
Mel Blunt 70.
Yeah, it drafted Bradshaw in 70, got other guys, Mel Blunt, Jack Ham, Franco's college teammate at Penn State. Um, they got other pieces, but they didn't become a winning team until Franco entered the fold in 72. And he won Offensive Rookie of the Year, started right away. His first big run was against the Atlanta Falcons in a preseason game. That was kind of a statement made right away, but he got them to he didn't get them to the playoffs himself, but he was the missing piece that got them to the playoffs and
Right.
set up the immaculate reception, which obviously we all know all about. But
Right.
yeah, and Franco was a big Penn State guy too. Obviously we all know about his support of Joe Paterno. After everything went down in 2011, he got a lot of criticism for that. Got praise for that too, but he got a lot of
Right.
criticism for his.
Yeah, he got lost sponsors.
Yeah, he lost sponsors, lost the respect of people, had people calling him all kinds of things, but he stuck to his guns and he still wore the hat with the silhouette of Joe Paterno statue. He wore that everywhere. He wore that to
Yeah.
Penguin games. He went to a Rage Against the Machine concert back in the summer, wore the hat there.
Right.
He made no bones about how he felt about Penn State, how he felt about his coach. and that was something that you could feel however you want to feel about it, but he was a guy, he did not cave to the public opinion. That's
Yes. And that's what we will miss about him as we wrap it up. And my final thoughts is rest in peace. I'm glad that you have your number retired, and I'll be glad, honored to be seeing it.
yeah, it's gonna be a great night, Saturday night. I don't know if I'll be at the game. That's yet to be determined. But rest in peace, Franco Harris, age of 72. Penn State, Pittsburgh, NFL, college football, whatever. He's multiple forms of legend, and that's gonna be the way to remember him. And he was a top-notch human being as well, and that's the most important thing. But on that note, this has been episode 13 of the Nittany Sports Now's Victory Again podcast. We'll see what happens in the Rose Bowl between Penn State and Utah, January 2nd. But yeah, until then, keep reading our stuff on Nittany Sports Now. Follow my account at Joe Smeltzer 775, Brandon's account at B Walker to Dawn, and Nittany Sports Now's account at Nittany SN. Episode 13 of the Victory Again podcast is in the books.